We've gathered everything in Minecraft that makes absolutely zero sense. Starting first with, weight in Minecraft is a funny thing. Obviously, it takes some serious muscles for Steve and Alex to carry around stacks and stacks of raw materials, but what's even weirder is comparing the strength of Minecraft's other inhabitants. Take the drip leaf plant for example. While it will bend in a few seconds to an item as light as a feather, a literal anvil can hold on top of it with no problem. And then, weirder still is that if we stand on top of that anvil, it doesn't bend. But just us by ourselves? Yeah, you get the picture. Building with slabs is a pain. Not only does it take an extra crafting step to make these, but when you accidentally stack up a double slab like this, then there's no way to actually break the two slabs individually. Now, you can place them individually, but there's no way to pick and choose which one of these that you want to break. And personally, that's why I like playing with mods like this, so I can pick and choose my battles. Or break the whole thing if I really want to. There's so many ways that Mojang can fix this, it doesn't make sense that it's still in the game. Netherite is supposed to be the strongest thing in Minecraft. I mean, even if you drop the item in lava, it'll never burn. So why then is it not given the same resilience when it goes up against a cactus? Surely any item that you throw at the cactus, regardless of what it is, will just break on sight. Which is made all the stranger by the fact that if you were to take that block, not throw it into the cactus, but place it next to it, then the cactus just completely falls apart. I guess it could dish it out, but it just can't take it. Now folks, it's news to no one that lava is hot. Except of course, if it's just a few drips of lava. Because according to Minecraft, those are completely fine. Now I get it, these are particle effects, they're really not meant to do much. But based on my limited time spent in school, lava hurts, and if you get it on you, it's gonna do some amount of damage. And while this might be more of a pain to add to Minecraft than necessary, it would be a good wake-up call when you're mining to be careful where you tread if you got lava drips burning into your scalp. Alice and many others have talked about how creepers came to be from the original pig model. Well, there's arguably another weird fact that happened with our early creepers. And that would be that during the survival tests of Minecraft, the creepers actually did melee damage to the player. Which, yeah, pretty strange to see. But if a player were to get too close to a creeper at this time, they would deal 4 points of damage or 2 hearts of damage if you got too close. And it wasn't until the in-dev phase of 0.31 that this feature was ultimately removed. And thankfully so. It'd be pretty brutal if they could attack you to make you lower your shield and then explode. So thankfully it's just one or the other. Now, a beacon's a tough block to get. Not only do you need to kill the wither, but you also need glass and obsidian, which are 2 blocks that you don't want to punch with your fist. But when you put them together into a beacon, then no matter if you're using a pickaxe or not, you're able to break that just the same, which always looked so weird to me. I would have thought that at least the obsidian would mean that we need a diamond pick. But no, we're able to break this any which way that we want. Though for me, the way that I want might still be with a pickaxe. It just looks safer. There must have been some disagreement about how drip leaves work between the trailer team and the actual developers. Since when you watch drip leaves in the trailer, Alex is bouncing off of them, using them to spring from one to the other. But in game, they're not springy, they're quite the opposite. They just droop and fall. But even with that disappointment, the lush caves that she's in still seem a lot better than what Steve's dealing with. So I guess it's not that much of a loss. So zombies and zombie piglins like to break these turtle eggs. That's not the weird part. The weird part is that when they stomp on these eggs, the particles that it gives off are from the chicken egg texture, not the turtle egg, which is a bug for sure, but a bug that's also been unresolved. And since both the chicken and the egg came first, Mojang probably just thought they could use this texture and not have to worry about making a new one for the turtle egg. As time has gone on, nether bricks have gotten more and more variations to play around with, which is good. It helps break up the monotony. But while that makes sense, I can't for the life of me find out why a cracked nether brick doesn't actually appear in a nether fortress. I mean, these places, much like strongholds, are pretty run down. Engaging by the fact that we have to smelt nether bricks to actually make these, clearly heat is the defining feature, and there's nowhere you're gonna find more heat than in the nether. This structure you probably recognize from a thumbnail. That's because, as Mystery Ore shows off, Mojang asked that when you go to the nether, you're supposed to build this huge cobblestone structure occasionally to protect yourself. Literally in the diagram, they show Steve building 2 of these to help survive. And honestly, I don't know why a structure has to be this big when you could do the same job by just putting yourself in a hole like this. But hey, it'll be hard to miss on your way back, so I guess there's that. Fishing in Minecraft has long been overpowered. So much so that Mojang decided to nerf the treasure loot tables back in 1.16 for most of the fish farms. However, even the nerfed version of fish farming is still pretty overpowered. You see, if you were to take a random water bucket from anywhere in the world, be it a jungle, the ocean, or even a rain-filled cauldron, and then you place that water source wherever you'd like, you can still fish infinite cod and salmon out of that one block. I'm not complaining, but it is a bit strange. When our characters get shot in the 1.21 update trailer, you'll realize that any residual arrows are rendered as sprites instead of the entities that we see in game. And because of that, we're able to see the white parts of the arrowhead sticking out of Kai when they get shot. Whereas in game, it looks arguably more painful, with the arrows actually fully submerged inside of the character. You can't place 2-block tall flowers in the new decorated pots, or any flowers inside of them for that matter. And while it is possible to put one of the tiny flower pots on top of it and have it still look right, The truth of the matter is that even though these decorated pots are, well, pots, there's no way to put anything inside of them. Not water, not potions, not plants, nothing. Which is just confusing. Why would you add in these new 2-block tall plants that you get from the sniffer in the same update, but you give them no way to be planted inside of the new pots that came along with it? I don't know. Much like speedruns, Mojang does mention that you could use beds to kill the Ender Dragon. And hey, that part they got right, but the way they do it is not the best to say the least. According to the book, Mojang says that you need to use at least 12 of the beds to just kill the dragon. And the way you're supposed to do it is place a bed on the floor, wait for it to swoop down, and then explode it when it comes nearby. Or you could do it the actual way that speedrunners do it, which is by going to the end portal, waiting for it to perch, and then one cycling it like this. Something tells me that's better. So you go over to craft yourself a new set of iron tools, but in your hubris, you accidentally make a second pickaxe, so you put it in the furnace. Except regardless of the state that the pickaxe is in, you'll always get 1 nugget back in return. That seems pretty cheap, and instead, it might make sense that the amount of nuggets that you get from smelting an item is based off the item's quality, because you can't tell me that all of that iron just smelts down into one single nugget. It's just not possible. What do you call this Minecraft mob? Nowadays, I think we'd all agree it's a chicken, but that wasn't always the case. And there used to be a heated debate during the beta that this mob was a duck, not a chicken. I mean, even Notch referred to the mob as the chicken, duck, whatevers. So maybe that history is why Mojang decided that ducks will never be added to Minecraft. Though if you look at these community-made examples, it's clear that there is a lot more to be done here than just recolorations of the chickens. But instead, they could swim around in the new 1.19 swamps and rivers. Glowberries glow a lot more inside of the Minecraft trailers than they ever have in-game. And while some part of that's thanks to the fact that Mojang actually has shaders turned on inside of the trailers, here we can see inside of the lush cave that when the glowberries hit the floor, they still glow when they're dropped as an item. And for us in-game, no item glows when it hits the floor. At least not unless you're using some kind of mod pack that adds in dynamic lighting. The way that it's coded, leather armor keeps you from freezing in powdered snow. But that's a broader statement than you might think, since really any amount of leather armor is enough to do the job. So by just having leather boots, you're no longer going to freeze on the entire rest of your body, even when fully submerged in the powdered snow. And at that point, it seems like a bit much. I get wearing these moccasins to be able to walk on top of the powdered snow, but to keep you completely safe from the snowy peaks, that might be pushing it. Especially when mobs that drop leather aren't safe by themselves inside of the powdered snow. And it just seems like Mojang picking favorites. After you loot everything from another fortress, it turns out that what you're supposed to do is fortify and make it into your own base. And folks, Mojang wants you to go the whole 9 yards, building these tall towers for defense, replacing the floors with glass and slabs so no mobs can spawn, and even adding iron golems to the nether bridges to help defend you. Which definitely makes the nether fortress a lot more hospitable, but come on, we're still in the nether. That place will never be as safe as the overworld. But hey, with respawn anchors getting added in since this was written, it is a little bit more possible. Insta-mining is one of the simple joys of Minecraft, which is why it can be frustrating when something breaks your stride. And while plenty of things can do that, nothing bugs me more than cobblestone. As it is, cobblestone takes longer to break than normal stone. And maybe it's just me, but it seems odd that a block that's clearly already broken and smashed up takes longer to break than a solid like regular stone. Unless Steve adds some concrete or paste to cobblestone after mining it, I think it just doesn't make sense. When you're getting ready to fight the Wither, Mojang says you should fight it in the Nether, which not only seems a bit dangerous, but it also neglects to mention that netherrack has an extremely low blast resistance. So even if the Wither doesn't kill you, the falls into lava might. Banner patterns can be pretty neat when you put them to use in the loom, but as anyone who's ever played around with that item knows, it can be pretty easy to lose track, because for some weird reason, even though these are visual items, they don't actually have a visual indicator on the sprite, meaning you have to hover over and see that it's a creeper face. Folks, it only takes one look at the different banner fixed texture packs to see how cool this could be if we had a visual indicator. So for Mojang to do it, I think it's a no-brainer. As you can see from this example, Mojang wants you to go through the effort of moving cows and chickens into the nether, so that way you'll have a small bakery to craft up your cakes. And while I suppose that you could move over the cows and chickens necessary to do this, the simple truth is it's never going to be as easy to farm wheat in the nether as it is in the overworld. At least, you would think. But according to the guidebook, you're apparently able to use wet sponges to plant and grow crops inside of the nether. But obviously, Mojang missed the memo here, since not only does our water source instantly evaporate in the nether, but our sponges also instantly dry out. In fact, that's like the whole reason to bring a wet sponge into the nether. Who knows, maybe at some point this was actually a feature in the game, which could have been a cool way to have water inside of the nether, or at least least a cooler way than having it inside of a cauldron, since that's never been helpful anyway. Minecraft has its fair share of hazardous blocks. You wouldn't want to stand on something made of magma, that much makes sense. But then why is the stonecutter safe? Now, if it was the old stonecutter texture, I would get it. There, the saw blade's completely enclosed. But here, it's completely out in the open, for everyone to see. And while there do exist some data packs to make this dangerous, those just make it feel like you're hurting yourself for no reason. But especially with things like dripstone spikes getting added into the game, I still never understand why Mojang has this block this way. As you can see, when a gas shoots a fireball at Steve and Alex while they're in the nether, it doesn't just shoot the fireball, but it also recoils back from the action of shooting it, which in the actual game has never happened. And that just goes to show you Minecraft's lackluster representation of physics, since by having no recoil, this disobeys Newton's third law of motion. For every action, there should be an equal and opposite reaction. But obviously, gas have never been in the real world either. Maybe this is just how they work. You know how I mentioned that it makes sense to take damage from magma blocks? Well, that's still true, but what doesn't make sense is that when you sneak down on the magma blocks, then you don't take any damage. And I've heard a reasoning that when you're holding sneak, you're supposed to be walking more carefully on the stones of the magma. That's all well and good, but what's even more confusing is that when you go underneath a slab like this, visually, it still looks like you're crouching down, but if you're not holding that sneak key, the game thinks you're not, and it'll just apply damage the same. A long-standing tradition of Minecraft is you can actually craft 9 of a different material into a bigger block. And for that reason, it's always a surprise to me that we can't do that with a nether wart block. Lord knows that I can take 9 of these and actually craft them into a nether wart block, so why can't I undo the process? Way too many times putting a nether wart block in a crafting table and getting surprised as to why I don't get my nether wart back. And I've got a feeling I'm not the only one who does that. When preparing to go to the nether, you're apparently supposed to have a full set of enchanted diamond armor, which is a tall order, but that's not the toughest thing that Mojang wants you to get, since before going to the nether, they recommend getting yourself a fire res potion. And the only issue with that is that the magma cream that we need to make this is only accessible in the nether, and that would seem like we're at something of a standstill. How do you prepare for the nether when the only ingredients that you need are still left in the nether? In science, perpetual motion machines are just a hypothesis, but in Minecraft, it's as simple as 8 rails placed together like so. Since by building a square of regular rails like this, if you place a minecart on top of the slope, it'll continue to go around and around the loop, never slowing down. And to make things funnier, you put an entity inside, and that just makes the whole thing speed up. Pigs are one of the oldest forms of travel in Minecraft, and maybe because they're one of the oldest, they're also definitely one of the slowest. So it's shocking to see here in this trailer that a saddled pig is able to keep up with an elytra. I mean, even a horse can't do that inside of Minecraft. And especially given the fact that all they're holding is a redstone torch and not even the carrot on the stick that speeds them up, it really makes me feel like I've done a bad job at training my saddled pigs. And honestly, if you want to go fast with a pig inside of the game, you're better off just killing it so that you can sprint with the pork chop. Instead of finding shelter on your first day, Mojang would rather that you take all of the dirt around your spawn, build it up into a stack, so that you have a dirt pillar to mark your spawn coordinates. Which will be hard to miss, but there's one key flaw with this, which is that if you were to die and need to find back where you started, it's not going to be hard, you spawn back at the world spawn, which would be right where you put the pillar anyway. All this does is add insult to injury. And for all that work, I'd rather spend that dirt to defend myself against the monsters at night. A dirt hut is a lot nicer for defense than just having a big pillar. Minecraft has been around for a while, so as that goes, many features have been added in and then just sort of forgotten. And chief among those has to be the furnace minecart trains. As you can see, they can't go around corners, they can't go up or down, or even change directions without disconnecting. Honestly, I'm amazed it's still in the game. While I doubt that Mojang will ever take a look back into the old piece of code this is lying in, until that happens, I guess we'll just have to keep up the hype train. 13 seconds into the Tricky Trials update trailer, we can see a rendering error where they had it where the chest opens but leaves the lock on the bottom, instead of the way that it happens in game where the actual white part of this lock lifts up at the top part of the chest. And even later in that same trailer, it's animated correctly. It just seems like something that slipped past. But with how much is going on in screen in just this one shot, I get it. Farmland has some weird restrictions that dirt doesn't. Mainly, it's not a full block, so we're not able to place decorations on the side. This is the reason why torches and ladders don't go on the side of farmland, which is a weird limitation, especially for the torches, but I guess it's understandable. Though, while those don't work, for some reason, signs do. And honestly, putting a torch on the side of your farmland seems a lot less crazy to me. But if you really want it, just type torch on the side of the sign, and there, that's the closest you're gonna get. Here's why this anvil will never fall, or this sign will never break, even if it's not supported by anything. Since of this simple little piston contraption, we're able to completely break Minecraft logic. Now, when the sticky piston retracts, it doesn't properly update the block that's on top of it, or the one that you attach to the piston's arm. And the reason for that is because the piston doesn't actually think it's supposed to work, since the obsidian's keeping the slime blocks from being able to move. And as such, the slime blocks aren't the only one that doesn't move, and we can get all of these illegal blocks that you see here, giving us one of the simplest ways to do update suppression, and one that still works in modern versions, might I add. If you've ever looked at water tests inside of a game engine like Unity or Unreal, you're very well aware that people like to give plenty of particles to flowing water. And it seems like the Minecraft trailers are no different, since here, when we get to the edge of this waterfall in the trailer, there's a whole bunch of splash particles that are being given off at the source. But in game, we have nothing like that. And instead, we've had to resort to build hacks in the past where we're using actual llama spit to get the same effect. Which, don't get me wrong, looks great, but if I had the option between this or getting spat on, I'd pick not having to get covered in spit, please. Mushrooms seem to get a weird amount of love in Minecraft. I mean, how many other games do you know that have an entire mushroom biome and mushroom mob to choose from? Oh, what's weird is that with all this love of mushrooms, Mojang's never added in a classic mushroom feature from other games, which is to have glowing mushrooms. And the reason being is that Mojang thinks it's just too generic and overused. But what's funny still is that they're actually used in the game by Mojang, since the current mushrooms that we have give off a light level of 1, which is why we're able to make a slime farm like this. The slimes are able to spawn on that level of brightness, but no other mobs can. When it comes time to take on the dragon, me and my friends like to do it together as a bit of an event. So we go to the end dimension, take down the dragon, and then boom, whoever lands the last hit is the only person to get the achievement. There's other achievements in the game that don't require you to be the sole person to do it. But all of a sudden, when it comes down to killing the dragon, nope, it's just whoever got the last hit. And really, it would be better to see this group effort regarded as such, instead of an every player for themselves mentality. The Frostwalker enchantment has quite a bit of power, and if you got Frostwalker 2 on hand, then you can tame some of the biggest oceans and put them in your control. And while that's all well and good, don't expect to show that same kind of dominion on a waterlogged slab, because sure enough, even though these things have water in them, it's in the name, you're not able to frostwalk them. Now, from a game design point of view, I can see why this happens. But folks, I think it would be pretty cool to see some ice stairs. At the very least, it's worth playing around with. In the announcement trailer for the Buzzy Bees update, you notice that when you peek inside the beehive, you can actually see the bees sleeping. Which not only can you not peek inside of the beehive, but the bees also don't really sleep. And the only mobs that you're going to see do as much are villagers, bats, and foxes. Which is a shame, because I think having a particle effect like this with the little Z's floating up would be a really fun effect for when mobs are snoozing. Composters in and of themselves are kind of a ripoff. I mean, to put in all this play material and just get one bone meal, it seems like a raw deal. But while that's a different discussion for another day, what's actually weirder is that you can't compost bamboo. Now folks, in real life, bamboo can absolutely be composted. It's a natural fiber. But here, no chance. It's just panda food. So if you want to make your bamboo farm into something to get you bone meal, you're out of luck. Mojang's way for killing vexes might just take the cake for stupidity, since according to the book, the way you're supposed to kill vexes is using lava. But you might find that challenging, given that vexes are able to fly around and phase through blocks. Oh, and also, they take no damage from lava. Honestly, it baffles me that no one writing this book ever took the time to boot these up and try them for themselves. But hey, at least it's funny. What's the most recent pickaxe that was added to Minecraft? Well, you might think that it's netherite pickaxes, because those are the ones that we actually see in game, but during the development of Minecraft Dungeons, Mojang nearly added banana pickaxes to the game. Yeah, it wouldn't have been my pick either, but when these were planned, they were originally going to be added into Minecraft Dungeons in the jungle areas, and going to be called, no joke, the Monkey Motivator. Which I don't really get how that works. If you add a few sticks into a banana, that doesn't make it any more appetizing for me, but if monkey see and monkey do, then it'd be nice that if we were able to mine with this, then it could also get all the other monkeys to mine with us. But I digress, this melee weapon was never added, and now we just know about it this way. Back before Mojang added in the proper fire texture to the Legacy Console Edition, there was instead a placeholder texture that just looked like this. Now you can probably make out the top part, it says fire text, but what's these bottom few letters? Really, it spells out to be fire texture, honest, which, I mean, I'll have to take their word for it. Although I guess any texture that shows up when you're on fire would happen to be the fire texture, but obviously this didn't last very long in the game. But what's funny is that this still exists in the textures files today, along with all the other, much more believable as fire textures. When Alex falls off her roller coaster into the lush cave, you'll notice that this behaves very differently from how minecarts fall in the base game. For one, both the cart and Alex seem to experience some form of proper projectile motion, whereas in actual Minecraft, entities tend to have immense amounts of drag through the air. And also, the minecart's falling while still angled from the rail, whereas what would actually happen is that it stays on the same axis and falls level. Fences are a staple in a Minecraft build, so we're all pretty familiar with their limitations. That said, it makes sense that not us nor any other mob can jump over the fence block. I mean, it would make a pretty lousy wall if it could. But while you can't jump over a fence or a wall by itself, if you add a carpet on top, making the whole thing taller, then you can clear the jump. Don't get me wrong, I like using these wall and carpet combos in my builds, but do I understand them? Not so much. What are the essentials when you need to go mining? Some might say torches, food, a pickaxe, obviously. But if you're mojang, it's ladders. Yeah, no joke. Apparently you're supposed to bring a stack of ladders at all times, so that way you have a way to ascend to the surface quickly. And whoever wrote this clearly has a different definition of the word quickly, since the amount of time that it would take to make a perfect ladder right up to the surface winds up being significantly slower than just digging yourself a staircase out of there. And especially with the changes to the world generation since they wrote this, the world's a lot deeper. You're gonna need a lot more ladders to even try this out. Obviously, vertical slabs aren't allowed to be in Minecraft. Mojang even said so. But I mean, when you're looking at walls, and I get like a polished, tough slab here, this is already basically just a vertical slab. And I guess that would be Mojang's argument, is that like, hey, okay, people can be creative with this and get that. But I feel like people would be creative if you added in vertical slabs too. It just feels like an unnecessary hindrance. I guess now you could do it with a debug stick, if I'm not mistaken. See, as Observer shows off, we already got ourselves vertical slab. So look at this, by just copying over the block state, vertical slab, regular slab. If you anger an Enderman, don't worry, since apparently the course of action is to then trap an Endermine inside of a minecart and then roll it past the Enderman to lure them away. Except that requires way more steps than is necessary here. After all, why would you spend all that time to try and get the Endermite and build a whole roller coaster system for it, when if you really needed to, you could just place down a water bucket at your feet and the Enderman can't get close by. It's at least a lot cheaper to spend 3 iron ingots on a bucket than it was to spend 6 iron ingots on the rails to do this. So this is showing off different ways to do stealth in vanilla Minecraft. Now, you don't know this until we lay it out like so, but there actually is different levels of detection. So if I go into survival, currently at this part, I'm outside the creeper's detection range. Now, if I get over to this point, I'm safe while sneaking. This is 80% of its range. And then if I were wearing a creeper head, then that lets me go up to 50% of the range. And finally, if I had the invisibility effect from a potion, that lets me get to 7% of its range. So not fully close, and also I can't be wearing armor or anything, but to right about here, I'll be safe. You remember the Minecraft update where Mojang deleted Minecraft? Yeah, it sounds silly, but back in the beta version for 1.1, if you launched Minecraft, everything would seem to be normal, except for when the game actually launched and you would see that there was no text anywhere. Yep, all of the Minecraft font completely gone. Even in game, all of the item names have completely disappeared, and you also couldn't see the item quantity, which is made particularly bad by the fact that the early textures were pretty tough to make out. So if you didn't have text to guide your hand, who's to say what any of these actually were? Alright, Observer, we're talking about paintings, but you might see there's no paintings on these walls, and the reason is because these paintings weren't actually added in fully. These were added in back in the Wild update, these 4 elemental paintings, but only for creative. There's no way to get these in survival. And then in 1.21, they actually did add in a whole bunch of new paintings, and these still are not accessible. I don't get that at all. In the announcement trailer for the Minecraft live stream in 2022, you'll notice that in this example, there's multiple frogs that are able to ride in one minecart, which not only doesn't happen with any mob in the base game, but here we're also able to see the frogs. Since in reality, if you get a frog inside of a minecart, the only way you're going to be able to see it is from above. They're just too small within the minecart's model. Oh, and also, they got a warden inside of a minecart too. Don't think I didn't miss that. Iron golems can be a decent bit of help if you need it, and at the very least, they'll work the graveyard shift at your local village. So just round up the iron, set it up like this, and the job will be done. Or maybe not. You see, if the pumpkin isn't placed last, then the golem will not spawn even when it's in proper formation. And in fairness, this is likely a holdover from the older versions where you couldn't even place a pumpkin unsupported. So, as such, the code never accounted for the possibility. Observer, did you know that cake is a redstone component? Well, I'm sure you did because you're Observer. But sure enough, cake actually has a redstone level that it can give out. Cakes with comparators give off different levels when you eat them. And I remember when we had the redstone utilities resource pack, the more cake that you would eat, the more that you could see the level that it was giving off here. Very odd. Really? It works through a wall? That's so strange. So that's it. Cakes are denoted as a container block. That's why they're able to kind of pick up in this way. That's so weird. While it is true that the piglins are a terrible shot inside of the trailers, they more than make up for with swords. And here we can see the piglins one-shot Steve and Alex even when they're wearing full iron armor, which is more use than a golden sword's ever gotten from anyone. And in that case, I feel pretty left out. I mean, they're not even enchanted and they're doing this much damage. There's gotta be some way to use a sword that we're just not privy to. Kinda like how a Vindicator can use an iron axe for so much more damage than we've ever been able to do in game. Over the course of Minecraft's history, it was made so that hay bales could actually dampen your fall damage. But that being said, hay isn't the only soft block we got in Minecraft, which is why it's weird that other blocks such as sponge, snow, and wool don't dampen your fall damage. I mean, if you're giving me the option, I'd much rather fall on a block of snow or wool than anything to do with wheat. The sound effects for these blocks already sound so much softer than other options. I think it's just a natural evolution of the game. Anvil should be one of the strongest blocks in the game. I mean, with a crafting recipe that almost requires a half stack of ingots, you'd definitely hope this investment could hold up. But apparently, even the smallest flower in the game can still break a block like this. As shown, you could drop an anvil on just about any decoration block in the game, and it'll break upon landing. And then, just as you start to understand that logic, it still manages to break this dead bush, making the whole thing even more ridiculous. Loyalty as a concept is a really cool enchantment for a trident, but I guess it turns out that the trident is only so loyal. Because as you can see, when you throw it in the end void, no, the thing's never coming back. You lost it. Now look, I get why I'm not able to come back from the end void, but a magically enchanted trident, I'd at least expect it to put up a fight, but as it stands, this just makes tridents a whole lot less worthwhile when you're going around the end islands. And for that point, I'd rather just leave it in my overworld. Casting spells in Minecraft doesn't seem like a far cry from what we're already able to do, right? I mean, what's an enchantment if not a magic item? But Jeb's actually gone on record saying that they'll never add this feature into the game because of parity reasons. And maybe it's just me, but I don't see how there would be a parity problem there. I mean, presumably they would add it into both Bedrock and Java, so there you go, parity solved. Though maybe it's so that we don't get confused between ourselves and the witches. And I think that if Mojang ever wanted to add in the Illusioner mob properly, then a magic-based system or update would be a good way to do it. Now, one of the cool features in Minecraft is that if you throw an instant health potion on a zombie, it actually hurts them instead of heals them, and vice versa for an instant damage potion. But following that train of logic, wouldn't it make sense if regeneration instead worked as poison on undead mobs? And for better or worse, this would somewhat make witches into healers when they throw out their poison potions. And it would definitely add some stress the next time you see a team synergy in the dark. Now, if you've ever been outside in a winter wonderland, then you definitely know that snow is pretty good at falling from the sky. That is, unless you put it in a layer, in which case, I guess it's never gonna fall at all. Now, this is another case where Java Edition is actually different to the Bedrock counterpart. You see there, snow layers actually do fall when they're affected by gravity. And when you see how it works there, it makes sense. And it would look a whole lot nicer to just float in snow in the sky, trust me. Blast resistance is a funny thing. And for an example, let's compare an iron block and an iron chain. Now, clearly both are made of iron, but the block costs over 7 times the iron ingots that we need to make a chain link, which might have you to believe that the block should be stronger than the chain. But as you can see, that just isn't so, with both having a blast resistance of 6. So if you're looking for a solid iron wall around your base, maybe opt for the chain link fence instead. Prior to the update Aquatic, if you were to go fishing, the only fish you were gonna find was just fish. It was raw fish and cooked fish. But when we got all these other fish, they also took away this fish, meaning that we also never got to see an entity form of this item. But what's interesting is that if you actually look at the fisherman texture of these villagers, you can see that they do, even after 1.14, still have this fish texture. Very strange. After using all of your sponge to dry out the area for a guardian farm, now you know that you gotta dry out the things. And for that, you got a couple of different options. You can put them in a furnace or warm places like the Nether. And while that all makes sense, I don't quite get why it's the case that if I put a fire right next to a sponge, it's not gonna dry out. Look, these things are hot enough to light me on fire, and you're telling me they can't do the same to Patrick's best friend? That just doesn't make sense. When the 1.14 update rolled around, Mojang added in a chunk of different workstations. But now there were a few updates past that, it turns out that the fletching table is still the only table that doesn't have a purpose. I mean, you can use it to employ the villagers, so I guess they can use it, but we can't. I don't know why we don't make the new potion variants of arrows in this actual block. And that seems like a weird missed opportunity, at least until Mojang or the community can figure out what the heck this is supposed to do. Now sure, there is fire here, but with a debug stick, we can change the way that it's facing until it's no longer rendered like normal. And in fact, we can only see the flames if we crouch down over here. They're completely invisible anywhere else. Minecraft's textures aren't always pixel perfect, and while 1.17 took big strides to correct some of those, this block went unnoticed. As you can see, the light gray glazed terracotta is not only a mouthful to say, but also has a deceptively frustrating texture. If you try to line it up, you'll notice that the pattern doesn't connect, leaving many players frustrated and confused just how this slipped by, especially when the patterns are the whole point of glazed terracotta in the first place. The clouds are an odd remnant of Minecraft's code. I'd even wager that most of us have turned them off by this point, since they just tend to get in the way of things. But before you turn them off for good, maybe check this first. You see, if we position ourselves right above the cloud coverage during a storm, you'll notice how it even rains and snows above these clouds. So if you got yourself an elytra and you want to see it rain above the cumulonimbus, it is a cool view, albeit completely nonsensical. The addition of stripped logs into Minecraft brought a huge shift to building, because finally we had something that resembled the texture of logs while matching the color of the plank textures inside. Or at least, they mostly do. Since if we were to line them up, it's clear to see that dark oak just doesn't fit up with the rest of the pattern. Which is a shame, since a darker shade for the dark oak texture would look quite nice. And while there might be points for changing this just for consistency, I will admit that Kern's stripped dark oak does look quite nice as well. Depth strata could obviously help you move faster in water, so what about lava? Unfortunately, even if you drink a fire resistance potion to test this out, there's no difference that comes from wearing these boots or not. And that means slugging through the nether is going to be just this slow, regardless of how you do it. Minecraft has its fair share of bad deals, but this one might have to take the cake. Since if you're using coal to smelt coal ore to get more coal, you're not only wasting smelting power, but you're also wasting a perfectly good coal ore. And really, you should have switched out the silk touch you used to mine this for a fortune pickaxe. That would have been a much better return on your smelting. Or if you're sick of this, just maybe go into your settings and turn off friendly fire. Credit to the person who already made that joke in the comments. It made me chuckle. And with that, folks, YouTube thinks that you might like this video, so see if they're right and have a good one, alright?